Clint Barton, more commonly known as Hawkeye, is a regular member of the Avengers. No super serum, no iron suit, no magic hammer. And when you're a normal human fighting world-ending threats every other week, you learn to bring some heavy artillery to the battlefield. His weapon of choice? A bow and arrow. A weapon that's been outdated for about 500 years. But don't let that fool you. Inside that quiver is everything from a glorified boxing glove to an arrow that could level a city. These are all of Hawkeye's arrows, ranked from weakest to strongest. Starting at the absolute bottom of the quiver, the blunt arrow. No point, no payload. Just a rounded tip designed to knock a target out instead of putting a hole in them. It's basically getting punched from 300 feet away. Embarrassing for whoever's on the receiving end, but hey, at least they get to wake up later and complain about it. Next up, the classic. A pointed tip on a carbon shaft. Exactly what it sounds like. Not too fancy, but it gets the job done. These are the arrows Hawkeye brings to most missions, whether he's saving the planet or taking down a bank robber. And while they don't offer much in terms of originality, in the hands of a master bowman, they're deadlier than most guns. This is a guy who tagged Loki, an actual god, while firing without even looking at him. Yes, this is real. An arrow with a suction cup on the end. It sounds like a toy from the dollar store, but Clint uses these to stick to walls and create improvised handholds. And occasionally, to smack someone in the forehead without committing a war crime. This is where Hawkeye's arsenal starts getting creative. These are the routine trick arrows. The stuff he cycles through in almost every fight. The smoke bomb arrow releases a thick cloud of smoke on impact. Perfect for concealment, confusion, or getting out of a fight that's going badly. Every good magician needs an exit. The smoke arrow's louder cousin. A blinding magnesium flash, and a bang that leaves enemies stumbling around like they just looked directly at the sun. It also comes in a flare version for lighting up dark areas, or signaling the rest of the team that Clint needs backup. Again, for when the mission says bring them in alive. One hit delivers a sedative strong enough to drop a target mid-sentence. There's also a sleeping gas version for putting an entire room down at once. The net arrow fires a reinforced mesh net that wraps up a target completely. Great against groups, muggers, and anyone who thought running away was still an option. The bola arrow. On impact, it splits into a set of weighted cables that wrap around an enemy's legs mid-sprint. It's the net arrow's meaner little brother, and Clint's favorite way to trip someone at 40 miles an hour. And if the net somehow doesn't hold them, this one will. The putty arrow releases a fast-hardening adhesive that glues enemies to the floor, seals doors shut, and ruins everyone's day. It's like industrial-strength gum. The tracker arrow tags a target with a homing beacon smaller than a coin. Run all you want. Clint already knows where you're going. An arrow that comes back after you fire it. Why? Because sometimes the best angle of attack is from behind. And because nothing tilts an enemy harder than dodging an arrow, laughing, and then getting hit by the same arrow on the return trip. The cable arrow carries a reinforced high-tension wire that Hawkeye can ride like a zip line, stretch into a tripwire, or use to yank a weapon clean out of someone's hands. Simple, boring, and absurdly useful. An arrow specifically made to let Clint live out his dream of being Spider-Man. It fires a high-tensile cable that lets him swing between buildings, scale mountain ranges, or anchor himself in place. And he's used it everywhere from city rooftops to actual space. Now we're past the gadgets. These are the arrows Hawkeye pulls out when the fight actually gets dangerous. The sonic arrow releases a concentrated sonic blast that can burst eardrums, shatter glass, and disrupt anyone whose powers rely on concentration. It's loud enough to bring a super strong enemy to their knees. And yes, Clint being partially deaf in the comics makes this arrow very on-brand. The acid arrow sprays concentrated acid on impact. Doors, locks, robot armor. If it's solid, this arrow turns it into a problem for the janitor. It's one of the few trick arrows that's genuinely terrifying if you think about it too long. Hawkeye's answer to technology. The EMP arrow releases an electromagnetic pulse that fries electronics, drops drones out of the sky, and shuts down anything with a power button. There's even a specialized version tuned to scramble the vision. An android who can literally walk through walls. The most iconic trick arrow in the quiver. Similar to a normal arrow, but it can be detonated on impact, or remotely, while still in midair. That means even if an enemy dodges the arrow itself, they don't dodge the explosion. Fast opponents hate this one simple trick. Strap a rocket to an arrow, and you get exactly what it sounds like. The rocket arrow flies farther, hits harder, and explodes bigger than anything a bow should legally be allowed to fire. Subtlety not included. The cryo arrow flash freezes whatever it hits. It's used to immobilize enemies, freeze machinery solid, and occasionally put out fires that the explosive arrow started 5 seconds earlier. And for the weirder knights, there's the silver arrow. Werewolves, vampires, anything allergic to silver. Yes, the Avengers deal with those too. And yes, Clint has a specific arrow just for it. And finally, the top of the quiver. The arrows that make you question why S.H.I.E.L.D. ever let one guy carry all of this. Arrows tipped with the two most broken metals in the Marvel Universe. The vibranium arrow absorbs and redirects energy on impact. The adamantium arrow pierces basically anything that isn't also made of adamantium. When Clint pulls one of these out, he's not trying to slow you down anymore. An arrow loaded with Pym particles. The same size-changing science behind Ant-Man. Clint has used these to shrink targets, turn one arrow into a giant barrage mid-flight, and even grow himself into a giant. And it gets better. In one of the greatest team-up moves ever put on screen, Ant-Man shrinks down, rides the arrow like a missile, and gets fired directly into Tony Stark's suit. The arrow becomes a delivery system for an entire superhero. You read that right. A 30 megaton explosive arrow that Hawkeye fired at Ultron. For reference, 30 megatons is roughly 2,000 times the bomb dropped on Hiroshima, condensed into something Clint carries in a tube on his back. This isn't a trick arrow. This is a war crime with feathers on it. And the strongest arrow Hawkeye has ever fired. A mystically enhanced arrow, gifted to him by Thor himself. An ordinary human, firing a weapon blessed by the god of thunder. When the guy with no powers gets handed divine ammunition, that's when you know the Avengers are done playing around. Before we reach the top of the quiver, two quick honorable mentions. First, the puker arrow, which does exactly what the name promises, and makes whoever it hits violently throw up. And second, the chainsaw arrow. An arrow, with a chainsaw on it. No further questions. Moving on. So next time someone says Hawkeye is just the guy with the bow, remember, that quiver holds knockout gas, acid, EMPs, a nuke, and a literal gift from a god. Not bad, for the guy with no superpowers. And before you go, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more superhero content like this. There's a whole lot more on the way.